What if greatness in a woman was never about how beautiful she looks, how successful she appears, or how many people admire her? What if the real signs were much quieter? Her resilience when life gets difficult, her courage to choose herself, her ability to lift others without losing herself, and the standards she refuses to compromise. A woman meant for greatness doesn't always recognize her own power at first. Sometimes, greatness is already inside her, waiting for the moment she finally believes it. Today, we're going to uncover 20 inspiring signs that reveal a woman is meant for something greater. A woman meant for greatness eventually realizes that her life cannot be built entirely around other people's expectations. There comes a moment when she begins to ask herself a different question. Instead of asking, "What will make everyone happy with me?" she starts asking, "What truly matters to me? What am I here to contribute? What kind of woman do I want to become?" That shift is powerful because purpose changes the way a person sees everything. It gives meaning to ordinary days and direction to difficult decisions. Purpose does not always arrive as one dramatic revelation. Sometimes it begins quietly. It may start with a feeling that something is missing, even when everything looks fine from the outside. She may have a career, relationships, responsibilities, and achievements, yet still feel that there is something deeper she needs to discover. That feeling should not always be ignored. Sometimes it is the beginning of growth. It is the inner voice reminding her that she was not created merely to exist, please others, and move from one obligation to another. She has something to give, something to build, something to become. A woman with purpose does not necessarily have every answer. In fact, she may have many questions. But she is willing to search. She pays attention to what energizes her, what challenges her, what breaks her heart, and what makes her feel deeply alive. She begins noticing the problems she naturally wants to solve and the people she naturally wants to help. She discovers that purpose is often connected to the things she cares about most deeply. And once she begins to understand her purpose, her decisions become clearer. She no longer says yes simply because she is afraid of disappointing someone. She begins to evaluate opportunities differently. She asks whether something is moving her closer to the person she wants to become or pulling her away from that person. She understands that every yes has a cost because time, energy, and attention are limited. Saying yes to everything can eventually mean saying no to herself. This does not mean she becomes cold or selfish. Quite the opposite. A woman who understands her purpose can become more intentional in the way she loves, works, serves, and leads. She knows that she cannot give her best energy to everything and everyone. She learns to focus on what matters most. Her kindness becomes stronger because it is no longer driven by the desperate need to be accepted. Her generosity becomes healthier because she understands the difference between helping someone and sacrificing her entire identity for them. Purpose also gives her strength during difficult seasons. Life will eventually test every person. There will be moments when plans fail, relationships change, opportunities disappear, and confidence becomes difficult to maintain. Without purpose, those moments can make a person feel completely lost. But when a woman knows why she is moving forward, temporary disappointment does not have the final word. She can lose an opportunity without believing she has lost her future. She can experience rejection without believing she has lost her worth. This is one of the clearest signs of greatness. She learns to separate an event from her identity. Failure happened, but she is not a failure. Someone rejected her, but rejection does not define her. A chapter ended, but her entire story has not ended. Purpose gives her the perspective to keep moving. And perhaps most importantly, a woman with purpose understands that greatness is not necessarily about becoming famous, wealthy, or admired. Greatness can be found in raising a family with love, building something meaningful, serving a community, creating art, leading a team, educating others, starting a business, overcoming adversity, or simply becoming a person whose presence makes other people stronger. Greatness is measured by meaning and impact, not merely visibility. So if you are wondering whether you are meant for something greater, do not begin by looking at someone else's life. Look inward. Ask yourself what matters enough to you that you are willing to work for it when nobody is applauding. Ask what kind of difference you want your life to make. Ask what values you refuse to abandon, even when abandoning them would be easier, because a woman with a deep sense of purpose does not need to have her entire future figured out. She simply needs the courage to take the next meaningful step. Purpose becomes clearer through action. The more she learns, serves, creates, and grows, the more clearly she begins to see her path. And that is where greatness begins. Not when everyone recognizes her, but when she finally recognizes that her life has meaning. A woman meant for greatness is not a woman who has never struggled. She is a woman who has learned how to transform struggle into strength. Life will challenge everyone, but not everyone responds to those challenges in the same way. Some people allow difficult experiences to convince them that they are powerless. Others allow those same experiences to develop courage, wisdom, patience, and resilience. The difference is not always what happens to a person. Sometimes the difference is what she decides to do with what happens to her. There will be moments when she feels exhausted, disappointed, rejected, or uncertain about the future. There may be days when she questions whether she is strong enough to continue. But greatness does not require her to pretend that everything is easy. She's allowed to hurt. She's allowed to cry. She's allowed to admit that something broke her heart. Strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is the decision to keep moving even after experiencing emotion. A powerful woman learns that pain can teach her something. A difficult relationship may teach her the importance of boundaries. A failure may teach her preparation. Rejection may teach her self-respect. A missed opportunity may teach her patience. A season of loneliness may teach her how to become comfortable with herself. None of these experiences are automatically valuable, but they can become valuable when she chooses to learn from them. This mindset changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" she eventually begins asking, "What can this teach me?" That question does not erase the pain, but it gives the pain a purpose. It moves her from helplessness toward responsibility. She cannot always control what happens, but she can control how she responds, what she learns, and what she chooses to do next. Consider what happens when she fails at something important. A woman without resilience may immediately conclude that she is not capable. She may compare herself with people who seem to be succeeding and decide that she should stop trying. But a resilient woman looks at failure differently. She studies it. She asks where she went wrong, what she could improve, and what she needs to learn. Then she tries again with more knowledge than she had before. That is how strength is built, not through one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of small decisions to continue. Every time she gets back up, she teaches herself something important. I can survive difficult moments. Every time she faces something uncomfortable instead of running away, she becomes more confident in her ability to handle life. Confidence is often created after the challenge, not before it. This is why you should never underestimate the woman who has been through difficult seasons and refused to become bitter. She may be quieter now. She may be more selective. She may not explain herself as much as she once did. But inside her is a deeper understanding of life. She knows that people can leave, plans can change, and circumstances can turn unexpectedly. Yet she also knows that she can adapt. And adaptation is a powerful form of strength. A woman meant for greatness understands that resilience does not mean staying in situations that continuously destroy her. Sometimes, strength means staying and fighting for something worth saving. Other times, strength means having the courage to walk away. The important thing is that her decision comes from wisdom rather than fear. She also stops romanticizing perfection. She understands that becoming stronger does not mean becoming flawless. She will still make mistakes. She will sometimes react emotionally. She will occasionally choose the wrong path. But instead of using those mistakes as evidence that she's incapable, she uses them as information. She becomes a student of her own life. Every experience teaches her something about herself. Every challenge reveals another layer of her character. Every difficult chapter gives her an opportunity to become more intentional about the future. Eventually, she reaches a point where she no longer fears every obstacle. She understands that difficulty is part of the journey. She doesn't welcome suffering, but she trusts herself to face it. That is a different kind of confidence. The confidence that says, I don't know exactly what will happen, but I know I can handle what comes next. And that belief can change a woman's entire life, because greatness is not built by avoiding every storm. It is built by learning how to walk through storms without losing yourself. A woman meant for greatness does not allow her past to become a prison. She allows it to become a teacher. She carries the lessons forward, but she does not carry every wound as an identity. Her scars become reminders of survival rather than symbols of defeat. She looks at everything she has overcome and realizes something profound. The person she is becoming would not exist without the challenges she once wished she could avoid. That is the transformation. The struggle did not have to destroy her. It could develop her. The rejection did not have to define her. It could redirect her. The failure did not have to end her story. It could become the beginning of a wiser chapter. And when a woman learns to turn adversity into wisdom, pain into perspective, and setbacks into strength, she becomes difficult to stop. Not because life becomes easier, but because she becomes stronger than the circumstances trying to hold her back. A woman meant for greatness eventually understands something that changes the way she sees herself. Her worth cannot depend on how other people respond to her. Compliments feel good, attention can feel exciting, and recognition can be encouraging, but none of those things can become the foundation of her identity. If her confidence depends entirely on being noticed, praised, chosen, or approved of, then her sense of worth will always be controlled by someone else. A woman who is growing into her greatness begins to take that control back. She stops asking the world for permission to believe in herself. This does not mean she thinks she is better than everyone else. It means she understands that she has value simply because she is a human being with potential, character, experiences, and something meaningful to contribute. She does not need to prove that she deserves respect by constantly achieving something impressive. Her accomplishments can add to her story, but they do not create her value. This distinction is incredibly important because there will always be someone who does not recognize her. There will always be someone who misunderstands her choices, questions her abilities, criticizes her appearance, or thinks she should be living differently. If she allows every opinion to determine how she feels about herself, she will spend her entire life trying to become acceptable to everyone. And that is an impossible mission. A woman with self-worth learns to listen without surrendering her identity. She can receive criticism without immediately believing she is inadequate. She can accept advice without allowing another person's opinion to become the definition of who she is. She can admit when she is wrong without concluding that she is worthless. That is emotional maturity. She also stops comparing her journey with everyone else's. Comparison is dangerous because we often compare our private struggles with someone else's public image. We see their success, but not their sacrifices. We see their confidence, but not their doubts. We see their achievements, but not the years of work that created them. A woman who knows her worth understands that her timeline is her own. Someone else may reach a goal before her. Someone else may receive an opportunity she wanted. Someone else may appear further ahead. But instead of allowing comparison to make her feel small, she asks, "What can I learn from this?" She turns envy into information and admiration into inspiration. She begins measuring herself against who she was yesterday rather than against everyone around her. This creates a quieter form of confidence. She doesn't need to announce her value constantly. She doesn't need to walk into every room demanding attention. She doesn't need to convince everyone that she is intelligent, attractive, capable, or important. Her behavior speaks for her. Her standards speak for her. Her consistency speaks for her. And because she is no longer desperate for validation, she becomes more selective about whose opinions she allows into her life. Not every criticism deserves her attention. Not every person deserves access to her emotions. Not every rejection deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs an explanation. This is not arrogance. It is discernment. A woman who knows her worth understands that approval is temporary, but character is lasting. She would rather be respected by the right people than liked by everyone. She would rather remain true to her values than change herself simply to fit into a particular environment. Sometimes this means standing alone. Sometimes it's making a decision that nobody around her understands. Sometimes it means walking away from an opportunity because accepting it would require her to betray something important about herself. Those decisions can be difficult, but they build something powerful. Self-trust. And self-trust is one of the strongest foundations of confidence. When a woman repeatedly keeps promises to herself, she begins believing herself. When she says she will improve a habit and actually does the work, she trusts herself more. When she establishes a boundary and respects it, she becomes stronger. When she chooses discipline over temporary comfort, she proves to herself that her future matters. Confidence is not simply standing in front of a mirror and telling yourself that you are amazing. Confidence grows when your actions give you evidence that you can depend on yourself. Of course, she will still have insecure days. She will still wonder whether she is good enough. She will still care about what certain people think. Knowing your worth does not mean becoming emotionally untouchable. It means learning not to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions for you. A woman meant for greatness understands that her value remains intact even when she fails. It remains intact when someone rejects her. It remains intact when she makes a mistake. It remains intact when she is not the most talented person in the room. She does not need to be perfect to be worthy. She only needs to be willing to grow. And once she truly understands that, something inside her becomes calm. She stops chasing validation and starts building a life. She stops performing for approval and starts living according to her values. She stops asking, "Do they think I'm enough?" and begins asking, "Am I becoming the woman I respect?" That is the question that changes everything, because when a woman knows her worth, she no longer needs the world to constantly remind her that she matters. She carries that knowledge within herself, and from that foundation, she can pursue greatness without losing herself along the way. A woman meant for greatness eventually learns that protecting her peace is not selfish. It is necessary. There is a difference between being kind to everyone and giving everyone unlimited access to your time, energy, emotions, and attention. A woman can have a good heart and still have strong boundaries. In fact, one of the clearest signs of emotional growth is learning that kindness without boundaries can eventually become self-abandonment. For a long time, she may have believed that being a good woman meant always being available. She answered every message, solved everyone's problems, tolerated disrespect, accepted excuses, and stayed quiet whenever someone crossed a line. She thought saying no would make her selfish. She thought speaking honestly would make her difficult. She thought walking away would make her a bad person. Then life teaches her a different lesson. She discovers that constantly sacrificing herself does not automatically make her loving. Sometimes it simply makes her exhausted. Sometimes the people she keeps rescuing never learn responsibility. Sometimes the people she keeps forgiving never learn respect. And sometimes the person she keeps abandoning is herself. That realization changes her. She begins to understand that a boundary is not a punishment. It is a clear statement of what she will and will not accept. It tells people how she expects to be treated, but more importantly, it reminds her how she must treat herself. She learns to say no without writing an entire explanation. "No, I cannot do that. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I am not comfortable with that. No, I need time for myself." These sentences may sound simple, but for someone who has spent years trying to please everyone, they can require enormous courage. A woman growing into greatness understands that every yes has a cost. Her time is limited. Her energy is limited. Her attention is limited. If she gives everything to everyone else, eventually there will be nothing left for her own growth, dreams, relationships, health, and purpose. So she becomes intentional. She asks herself, "Does this deserve my energy?" That question can protect her from countless distractions. She also learns that not everyone deserves access to every part of her life. Some people are trustworthy, some are not. Some celebrate her growth. Others become uncomfortable when she changes. Some people respect boundaries. Others test them repeatedly. A wise woman pays attention to patterns. She does not judge someone solely by their promises. She watches their behavior. She notices whether they respect her no. She notices whether they apologize and change or apologize and repeat the same behavior. She notices whether conversations leave her feeling understood or constantly drained. This does not mean she becomes suspicious of everyone. It means she becomes discerning. And discernment is essential because greatness requires focus. Imagine trying to build a meaningful life while constantly being pulled into unnecessary arguments, drama, gossip, emotional chaos, and relationships that repeatedly violate your values. It becomes almost impossible to hear your own thoughts. Your attention is consumed by problems that were never yours to solve. A woman with boundaries learns to step away. She doesn't need to win every argument. She doesn't need to respond to every provocation. She doesn't need to convince someone who has already decided to misunderstand her. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. There is tremendous power in realizing that silence can be a boundary. Walking away can be a boundary. Creating distance can be a boundary. Protecting your schedule can be a boundary. Refusing to participate in gossip can be a boundary. And boundaries become even more powerful when they are followed by consistent action. Saying, "I won't tolerate disrespect" means very little if she continues accepting disrespect every time it happens. Her boundary becomes real when her behavior supports her words. This is where self-respect grows. She begins to realize that she doesn't have to convince everyone to respect her. She has to respect herself enough to leave environments where respect is consistently absent. That can be painful. Sometimes boundaries mean disappointing people she loves. Sometimes they mean changing friendships. Sometimes they mean stepping away from relationships that once mattered deeply. Sometimes they mean choosing herself after years of choosing everyone else. But choosing herself does not mean she stops caring about others. It means she finally includes herself in the circle of people she cares about. That is a profound shift. A woman meant for greatness understands that her peace has value. Her attention has value. Her emotional energy has value. Her future has value. She cannot spend those resources carelessly and expect to have enough left to build the life she wants. So she becomes selective, not because she thinks she is better than others, but because she understands that her life has a purpose. She protects her peace so she can think clearly. She sets boundaries so she can love without resentment. She says no so that her yes can actually mean something. And she walks away from what repeatedly diminishes her because she understands that greatness requires space to grow. The woman who learns this no longer feels guilty every time she chooses herself. She understands that self-respect is not cruelty, boundaries are not hatred, and protecting her peace is not selfishness, it is wisdom. And sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can say is not another explanation. It is simply, "This is no longer acceptable to me." Then she has the courage to live according to those words. A woman meant for greatness eventually realizes that her strength is not measured only by what she can accomplish for herself, but also by the difference she makes in the lives of other people. There is a special kind of power in becoming someone who helps others believe in their own potential. She does not need to be the loudest person in the room or constantly prove that she is successful. Sometimes her greatest impact comes from the way she encourages, supports, teaches, and inspires the people around her. She understands that lifting others does not mean carrying everyone. That distinction matters. A woman with purpose can be generous without becoming responsible for everyone else's life. She can offer guidance without controlling someone's decisions. She can support a friend without sacrificing her own future. She can celebrate someone else's success without feeling threatened by it. She understands that another woman's achievement does not take anything away from her own potential. This is a sign of emotional strength. Insecure people often believe that success is a limited resource. If someone else receives recognition, they feel forgotten. If another woman becomes successful, they feel less successful. If someone else receives an opportunity, they wonder why it wasn't given to them. But a woman who is becoming great thinks differently. She asks, "How can her success inspire me?" She understands that another person's victory can be evidence of what is possible rather than evidence of what she lacks. She can clap for someone else while continuing to work toward her own goals. She can celebrate another person's growth without abandoning her own. That kind of generosity creates powerful relationships. Imagine being the person who encourages someone when they are ready to give up. Imagine telling someone, "I believe you can do this," at the exact moment they have stopped believing in themselves. Sometimes one sentence can change someone's direction. One opportunity can change someone's future. One introduction can open a door. One honest conversation can prevent someone from making a decision they would regret. A woman meant for greatness understands the value of these moments. She doesn't underestimate the influence of her words. She chooses encouragement over unnecessary criticism. She chooses honesty over false praise. When someone needs correction, she does not humiliate them. She tells the truth with compassion because her goal is not to make herself feel superior. Her goal is to help the other person become stronger. This is what real leadership looks like. Leadership is not always having a title. Sometimes leadership is simply being the person others trust when things become difficult. It is being dependable. It is listening when someone needs to be heard. It is sharing knowledge instead of keeping it secret. It is creating opportunities instead of controlling them. And perhaps one of the most beautiful qualities is her willingness to teach what she has learned. She remembers what it felt like not to know. She remembers the mistakes she made. She remembers the moments when someone gave her advice that helped her move forward. So when she gains wisdom, she doesn't lock it away. She shares it. She tells younger women what she wishes someone had told her. She encourages people to learn from mistakes instead of being ashamed of them. She reminds others that progress takes time. She becomes proof that growth is possible. But she also understands something important. Helping others does not mean trying to save everyone. There will be people who refuse advice. There will be people who repeatedly make the same choices. There will be people who take advantage of kindness. A woman with wisdom knows when to offer support and when to step back. She can care without controlling. She can love without rescuing. She can encourage without becoming responsible for another person's choices. That balance protects her own growth, because she knows that she cannot pour from an empty cup. If she wants to have a meaningful impact, she must continue developing herself. She reads, she learns, she reflects, she improves her skills, she takes care of her responsibilities. She continues pursuing her own purpose. Her growth becomes part of her contribution. The stronger she becomes, the more she can give. And this creates a beautiful cycle. She grows, then she helps others grow. Those people become stronger, and they eventually help someone else. Her influence continues beyond what she can personally see. That is a different definition of success. Success is not only about what you achieve and keep. Sometimes success is about what you build in other people. It is the confidence you helped create, the courage you helped awaken, the lesson you shared, the opportunity you provided, the person who became stronger because you believed in them. A woman meant for greatness does not need to be threatened by someone else's light. She understands that there is room for many people to shine. She knows that making another woman feel small will never make her powerful. So she chooses a different path. She becomes the woman who celebrates, the woman who encourages, the woman who teaches, the woman who opens doors, the woman who tells the truth with kindness, the woman who becomes stronger without demanding that everyone around her become weaker. And when she lives this way, her greatness becomes bigger than herself. People may forget some of the things she accomplished, but they will remember how she made them feel about their own potential. That is influence, that is leadership. And that is one of the clearest signs that a woman is not simply trying to become successful. She is becoming someone whose success creates success in others. A woman meant for greatness eventually reaches a point where she understands that she cannot spend her entire life becoming smaller just to make other people comfortable. She realizes that there is a difference between humility and self-erasure. Humility allows her to appreciate others, learn from criticism, and admit when she is wrong. Self-erasure forces her to hide her dreams, silence her opinions, lower her standards, and pretend to be less capable than she really is. Greatness begins when she stops confusing the two. For years, she may have listened to voices telling her what she should be. Maybe she was told to be quieter, less ambitious, less confident, less independent, or less demanding. Maybe people questioned her dreams because they were bigger than what they imagined for themselves. Sometimes the pressure does not even come from strangers. It can come from people she loves, people who genuinely care about her, but cannot understand the direction she wants to take. A woman with courage learns to listen without automatically obeying. She understands that advice can be valuable, but it is not always a command. Other people can offer opinions about her life, but they cannot live her life for her. They will not experience every consequence of her choices. They will not wake up every morning carrying her dreams. They will not feel the regret of never trying. So she begins asking a more important question. If I keep living according to everyone else's expectations, will I become the woman I was capable of becoming? That question can be uncomfortable, because sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes she realizes that she has been saying yes when she wanted to say no. Sometimes she realizes that she chose a path because it impressed others rather than because it fulfilled her. Sometimes she realizes that she has been seeking permission to become someone she already had the potential to be. And when she recognizes this, she begins changing, not overnight, not perfectly, but intentionally. She starts taking her own dreams seriously. She develops skills. She becomes disciplined. She learns to tolerate discomfort. She stops waiting until she feels completely ready. She understands that confidence often comes after action, not before it. She also stops apologizing for having standards. If she wants respectful relationships, she does not need to feel guilty about that. If she wants meaningful work, she does not need to apologize for wanting more. If she wants to improve herself, she does not need permission. If she has ambitions, she does not need to hide them. If she wants peace, she does not need to justify protecting it. This does not mean she becomes arrogant or decisive. A truly great woman can remain kind while becoming stronger. She can be ambitious without becoming cruel. She can be confident without humiliating others. She can know her worth without believing she is better than everyone else. That balance is important because greatness is not about becoming someone who needs no one. It is about becoming someone who does not lose herself while loving, serving, and connecting with others. She learns to accept that not everyone will understand her journey. Some people will question her. Some will criticize her. Some may even laugh at her dreams. But she discovers that criticism is not always a sign that she is wrong. Sometimes it simply means she is doing something unfamiliar. When she chooses a different path, people who are comfortable with the old version of her may struggle to understand the new one. She no longer spends all her energy trying to convince them. Instead, she lets her actions speak. She works, she learns, she grows, she stays consistent, and eventually the results begin to communicate what explanations never could. A woman meant for greatness also understands that becoming her best self requires discipline. Dreams alone are not enough. Potential alone is not enough. She has to turn potential into practice. She wakes up and does the work even when motivation disappears. She continues learning when nobody is watching. She keeps promises to herself. She chooses long-term growth over temporary comfort. She understands that every small decision is shaping the person she will eventually become. This is why greatness is not something that suddenly happens to her. It is something she builds day by day, choice by choice, habit by habit. She becomes stronger by choosing courage when fear tells her to stay comfortable. She becomes wiser by learning from mistakes. She becomes confident by keeping promises to herself. She becomes powerful by taking responsibility for the direction of her life. And eventually, she stops asking for permission to become herself. That may be one of the most important transformations of all. She no longer needs everyone to approve of her choices before she takes action. She can appreciate support, but she does not depend on it. She can accept disagreement without abandoning her values. She can walk into unfamiliar rooms without shrinking herself to fit the expectations of others. She understands that her life is not a performance designed to satisfy an audience. It is a responsibility. She has been given time, abilities, experiences, opportunities, and lessons. What she does with those things is partly her choice. And perhaps that is the true meaning of becoming unstoppable. It does not mean she will never feel afraid. It does not mean she will never fail. It does not mean everyone will support her. It means she refuses to let fear, failure, rejection, or other people's expectations decide who she becomes. She chooses, she grows, she learns, she continues. And one day, she looks back and realizes that the woman she once wanted permission to become was inside her all along. She simply had to stop making herself smaller and start giving herself permission to rise.